First of all, welcome. We are going to talk about guarding, which for the most of you, it's block charge. A lot other things that go with guarding, but we're primarily going to look at block charge and how do we properly rule and determine on whether it is a block or a charge. For those of you who don't know, well, here's a nice little montage. Just a bunch of charges and blocks. It's probably the toughest call to make in basketball. It usually gets the largest reaction. So it tends to be the most disputed. Everyone thinks, right, 50%'s right, 50%'s wrong. And it's also one of the most inconsistently called, or maybe improperly called, because we're not really seeing it properly. So there's two reasons to why I think block charge fouls are so on polar opposites sometimes when officials see the play. One of it is because they're afraid to make a call that's unpopular, right? Block charge is almost always unpopular. When you call that charge, you seem to take more grief than you do when you call a block. Or maybe we're just not looking at it right and we don't know what to see, what to look at in order to make it properly. So I can't help you if you're afraid to make a call that's unpopular. That's something you gotta work through yourself. But I can help you, hopefully, on being able to know what to look at, what to look for, cues, so to speak, in order to figure out whether it's block charge. And then the next time you see it real time, hopefully you can rule on it properly. All right. So those of you who have not heard this, most officials, senior officials, will tell you referee the defense. Well, what does that mean? Referee the defense is easier said than done, but it means two things in my opinion. One, stop watching the ball. The ball is meant for the person, the official, who is watching their primary area, right? The ball is the action, so the primary official watches the primary area. You have to watch the defense, however, in order to determine whether the defense had a legal guarding position. So we are refereeing the defense so we know where the defense was at the time of contact. If you're only watching the ball, only watching the offensive player, and then all of a sudden there's contact and the defender comes out of nowhere, well, it didn't come out of nowhere. The defender came from somewhere, and that's why you need to referee the defense. Does it make sense so far?
Yes, sir.
All right. Those of you who don't know me, I am big on breaking out the rule and actually reading the rule and dissecting the rule and then putting it together with video so we can determine what it is. So that's what we're going to do with guarding. Guarding is broken out. I think that's covered up. Let me do this. All right. Guarding is broken out into 5 articles. It's Rule 4, Section 23. Guarding is the act of legally placing the body in the path of an offensive opponent. Great. Easy enough, right? So that's not all. Article 1 also states that there's no minimum distance required and there's no maximum distance. Now, yes, it says 6 feet, but they are talking about closely guarded situations. So really, there's no maximum distance in order to establish a legal guarding position. So with this clip here, the player's coming down. This player, he's got 2 feet, or he's more than 6 feet away. And so technically he can establish a legal guarding position. Right?
Right.
Between here and here, he has a legal guarding position. Yes, he's way far back, but there's no maximum distance. All right. Also, remember, every player is entitled to a spot on the floor, right? As long as they're there legally and they get there first, they get that spot. So as an example, you have a player here who's not really guarding anybody, but then gets plowed over from behind. That player is entitled to that spot on the floor. So you cannot just run a player over, even though they're not technically guarding you, a player. They're allowed to stand there. All right, lastly, any player who extends an appendage, that's the way I read it, something that you can stick out into the path of an opponent, they've lost their legality. They're no longer legal if they stick an arm or a shoulder or something into their opponent.
I knew you would. You know, it's a great way to get your name out there, establish yourself as a potential leader in the department.
All right, he looked like he was pretty set, waiting for the contact, but then he sticks his arm out to make sure he gets contact. He's lost his legal standing as a guarder. Everybody see that?
Yep. I saw it.
All right, next. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. All right, now, we've talked about this before, but there are ways to establish a legal guarding position. The rule book states how we establish a legal guarding position. Does anyone on the call remember what those two requirements are? You only have to do two things.
2 feet on the floor.
Both feet on the ground and facing
2 feet on the floor
facing the opponent.
and facing the opponent, right? Your torso must be facing the opponent. That's it. If you've done those two things, you have established a legal guarding position. So then the video shows us block or charge. Well, was he in a legal guarding position? He had 2 feet on the floor right here, and his torso is facing his opponent. He still has 2 feet on the floor, his torso facing his opponent. So even as he gets closer. So that is a legal guarding position. That would, if we're going to rule, be an offensive foul, player control foul. All right, so that's how we establish. But after we've established, Article 3 tells us, what can we do after we've established our legal guarding position? All right, there's 5 statements. All of these statements are basically telling you you can go any way, any position, any direction other than toward your opponent. So the first one states you don't have to remain to have 2 feet on the floor. You can have 1, both, or even be airborne, and you still have maintained your legal guarding position. Was that defender legal?
I say yes.
He's got 2 feet on the floor here, and he's facing his opponent. So now he's got a legal guarding position. He jumps straight up in the air, and we've just learned you can be airborne and still have a legal guarding position. So that defender was legal. All right, you don't have to keep facing your opponent either. Once you've established a guarding position, you no longer have to continue to face your opponent. All right, 2 feet, he's facing his opponent. There's no minimum, right? So he can be super close as long as he gets there first. He turns because he sees the player coming and he gets hit on the side, but that doesn't make him illegal. He is still a legal defender, even though he turned his shoulder. And you'll see a lot of guys will call a foul on that and say, well, I thought he turned into him or he didn't hit him solid in the chest. You don't have anything about hitting solid into the chest. He's allowed to turn. All right, here's where they say you can move laterally or obliquely. What does obliquely mean? It means you can move kind of to the side and backwards. Doesn't have to be exactly lateral straight across, but you can move laterally or obliquely to maintain your position. So did the defender do anything wrong on this clip here? Is he moving laterally or obliquely? There's the line to kind of give you through his hips. Looks like he's moving even backwards a little bit, so more obliquely than anything, but that's pretty lateral. He's maintaining his legal guarding position. Remember.
Josh,
Yes.
because he's moving and it picks his foot up, does that count then as he's lost it since, or I know it's kind of ambiguous, but he's shuffling and his
Okay.
foot's up in the ground when is off the ground when he makes contact. Does that matter?
It does not matter. Here's what I want to say before that is, I've said this in clinics. Can you run? Are you able to run? Why is this not pausing? Can you run without having 2 feet on the floor? I would say no.
No, you can't.
If you have 1 foot off the floor, you can't really run. You're more hopping, aren't you?
Correct.
So even though technically your 2 feet might not be touching the floor at the exact same time, if you're running with an opponent, you've got 2 feet on the floor. All right, so let's not split hairs on, he never sat still and established because he's got to have 2 feet on the floor. If I'm running with my opponent, I'm legally have 2 feet on the floor.
Okay.
All right?
I got it.
Now, once you established, you don't have to have 2 feet. Remember, you can have 1 foot on, you can have 2 feet on.
Right.
You don't need to continue to have 2 feet on the floor. So the reason that he's moving his feet should have no bearing onto whether he is maintaining his legal guarding position. And he's moving laterally along this line here. It's all staying along the same point here. So he did not move into the opponent. The opponent moved into him. So he is still legal.
Okay.
Those are hard ones. We get those blocks all the time because it looks like we're bumping into the defender, but we need to know whether he was legal, maintaining his legal position or not. All right.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes. He can jump in his own vertical plane. We all know about verticality, and they kind of talk about it briefly here. Kind of like he can remain airborne, but as long as he stays within his vertical plane, 2 feet facing opponent means he's got a legal guarding position, and he can jump within his vertical plane, which he does here. So he has still a legal guarding position, even though he is airborne. And lastly, they can turn or duck to absorb the shock of imminent contact. Now, this is a tough one. This one's not the best of clips to show it. As you can see, he's got a legal guarding position, correct? He's facing his opponent. There's 2 feet on the floor. He's moving obliquely now. And he starts to fall, duck, to absorb the contact. Now, there was no contact in this clip, therefore there is no foul. But if the offensive player continues and runs into that player, that should still be a charging foul because he has maintained his position. He is allowed to absorb that contact. Now, there's a fine line between falling and absorbing the contact and falling because you're flopping.
That looked like a flop to me.
And it may have ended up being, but just remember, just because I'm falling backwards, because I'm anticipating that hit, does not mean I'm flopping. I'm anticipating the hit, and therefore I'm trying to absorb some of that contact because I don't want to get killed as a defender. I want to make my coach happy, but I don't want to get killed. So just because they fall back before the contact happened, the way I like to put it is, if I wasn't falling back, and that defender hit me, would you have called a charge then? Why is it any less of a charge if I'm falling backwards before you hit me? I'm allowed to move backwards. I'm allowed to move laterally and obliquely. Correct?
Yep,
All right.
I get it.
Last article is Article 5. And that just talks about when you're guarding an opponent with the ball or a stationary opponent without the ball. All right? This is Article 4, I'm sorry. There's no time or distance that's required to obtain the initial lead in guarding position. So if you have an opponent who has the ball and they are moving, it's just whoever gets there first. You don't need to give them a step or a second. You just have to get there first. Same with an opponent who is without the ball, who is stationary. And then there's a different rule for an opponent without the ball who's moving, but we'll get to that in a second. All right? The only part of that is if that opponent with the ball or stationary without the ball is airborne, then we have to have gotten to that spot before they went airborne. All right, so if they're not airborne, who's ever there first? If they are airborne, you had to have been there before they went airborne. Everyone understands that, right? Here's a good example. Now this one is splitting hairs, and this is a really tough call. Did he get there before he went airborne? He's got 2 feet facing his opponent within his path. That the offensive player is still on the floor. He is not technically airborne. Therefore, the defender got there first. Now that's a bang-bang play, and in real time, I think it's 50-50. Guys might say block, guys might say charge. But if you slow it down and you read it by the rule, the defender had a legal guarding position and maintained it before he went airborne. Does everybody see that, even though it's nitpicking down to the last frame? Here's another one. Conversely, all right, the defender goes up. Now he's airborne. He just came off the floor. This defender moves over into his path, therefore becomes a block because he did not get to that spot first before he went airborne. Was that clear?
I saw that time. That was good call.
All right. Last article. That's when you are guarding an opponent moving without the ball, you do have to give time and distance. So if they don't have the ball and they're moving, you got to give them a stride or two and or a certain amount of time. And that time is dependent on how fast that defender without the ball is moving. If they're moving really fast, you might have to give them 2 steps, 2 seconds maybe. If they're moving slowly or hardly at all, you might only have to give them a half a step or a half a second. It all depends on how fast they're moving. All right? You don't have to give them more than 2 strides. And again, if they're airborne, you have to get there before they were airborne. So the same as with the ball. Now here's a clip to somewhat show. The player looks at the official like, what, are you kidding me? But he's got 2 feet on the floor. He's facing his opponent. And he has about 2 strides there, I think. The player's not moving that fast. You don't have to necessarily give 2 strides, but he gave him enough time to be able to avoid the contact. He didn't see the player there, therefore it becomes incidental, and it's a no call, just as the official had. We agree?
Great.
All right.
Yeah.
So now we know what guarding is, right? It's the act of legally placing the body in the path of an opponent. So what does that mean? If I'm legally in that path, it must be a charge, because charging is illegal contact that pushes or moves into an opponent's torso. If I'm legally there, then it should be a charging foul. Okay, but what if I didn't get there legally? What if I'm no longer legally guarding? Then it becomes a blocking foul, because blocking is illegal contact, which impedes the progress of an opponent. So it all comes down to, as I stated, legal guarding position. Was the defender in a legal guarding position? That's why we referee the defense. All right, everyone's got that? I'm going to break out charging just a little bit more, because there's a few more to charging that just kind of defines it a little bit extra. If a player is moving with the ball, they are required to stop or change direction to avoid the contact. The player with the ball has to move. If you have a legal guarding position, the defender or the offensive player has to move. It's in the rule book. It says they have to. All right, so here, this guy's got a legal guarding position. So the offensive player's coming in, and then this guy gets a legal guarding position. So he can't run into him because he's legal. So he's required to stop and move, which he does. Right? That's how we play basketball. Excellent. If the guards obtain a legal guarding position, the player with the ball has to get their head and shoulders past the torso, kind of like in a closely guarded situation, right? You beat this 5-second count by getting your head and shoulders past the torso. So until you get your head and shoulders past the torso of the defensive player, they are still considered to have a legal guarding position. And if contact does happen, the dribbler is responsible for the contact. Do we understand that concept? The dribbler is not given any extra protection because they're dribbling the ball. They still have to get past the defender. This is a pretty good clip that shows we got a block on the floor, but what happened? He's got a legal guarding position, right? So does the dribbler get his head and shoulders past the torso of his defender? Doesn't look like there. Still doesn't quite look like it. He's close, but he's not past it. Not even there. Then he does a little spin move. He's still not around. There's no foul there, at least not on the defender. The offensive player did not get his head and shoulders past his defender. We can't come up with a foul there. Not a blocking foul. All right. If there's two defenders that's guarding, again, they both have a legal guarding position, and there's less than 3 feet of space between them, again, the responsibility of contact is on the dribbler. And we've seen this more commonly in a situation like this where they're double teamed, right? And they try to go through the little double team here. Well, how much space is there in between? Looks like less than 3 feet to me. So if there's contact, who's responsible for it?
Dribbler.
The dribbler. The dribbler knows he can't quite fit through there, so if he forces his way through, well, the contact's on him. Now, that doesn't give the defenders, the right to do whatever they want as he tries to go through, but if they maintain their legal guarding position, they shouldn't be called for a foul. All right, and then lastly, the player with the ball cannot push the torso of the guard.
So Josh,
Right? Yes.
sorry for the interruption. On that last one then, that you're just saying there's no call. He can split the guys, and if there's contact, it's incidental. But if he loses control of the ball, there's not a foul because there's less than 50 feet of space.
So depending on what kind of contact happens, if those defenders remained legal, so we're going to assume they didn't extend a arm, leg, hip, right into the offensive player. And then let's say the defender pushes through and the defender gets the offensive player gets knocked over because they trip over a leg or a hip. It's either a no call or you're going to call a foul on the offense. Now, if you're going to call a foul on the offense, good luck with that, right? But if the offensive player kind of stumbles over a legal guarding guard, then yes, it's a no call.
Okay, cool.
And
Thank you.
if they lose the ball, it's a no call because the offensive player has caused all the contact.
Okay, thank you.
Right? You're welcome. But just remember, many times in that situation, and if you watch this clip again, one of the defenders may not have maintained their legal status because they stuck, it looks like maybe their leg into him. I can't quite tell exactly, but number 22 here almost looks like he raises his leg out into the defender. And his hip, do you see? So if he did that, that could have been a foul on the defensive player because he did not maintain a legal guarding position. Pretty tough to tell there. Don't call a foul just because you think, well, maybe he did. You either know or you don't know. But for the most part, if they're standing there, right, because they're blocking them, double gaining them, it's nothing. All
Okay.
right. All right. And then again, they can't push or do anything to gain an advantage on the torso of the guard. We see this a lot. They come up, and what does the offensive player do? They push off. That is a foul on the dribbler. We've got to call that. We cannot allow them to do that. He gained a huge advantage by giving a little shove. Here's another one. This one got called. He uses his arm to immobilize his defender to get around him. This is a foul, and we cannot allow the dribbler to do that. That's a huge advantage. Here's another one. This one's he's off to the side, and he pushes him off. That's still a big advantage. He got him off of his side, so he had more room to work with the ball. That is a foul on the dribble. The dribbler is responsible for that contact. We cannot allow them to do that. All right, everybody saw those. We agree with those, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So now you guys know what guarding is, you know what blocking is, and you know what charging is. You're all experts in the guarding and the block charge, correct?
Only because of you.
So let's do a little game here. We're gonna watch some video and we're gonna decide whether it is block, charge, or no call. I got 9 plays. Hopefully these play well for you. If you need me to replay them, let me know. Comes down into the lane, runs into a player. The official call on the floor is a block.
I got a
Play it
charge.
again. It happened here. I'm going to play it again.
I got a charge.
All right. The official call on the floor is a block. Mike says charge. Anyone else have a call before we see it play through?
I got a charge.
We got another charge. What does he have here? 2 feet facing his opponent. So legal guarding. He's not airborne yet. Who causes the contact?
Definitely a charge.
Definitely a charge, for sure.
But how come that referee is in the background there getting ready to go block?
Well, he called the block because he
He's
didn't
wrong.
see it. He didn't see it properly. For whatever reason, I don't know, but it clearly was a charge. All right, next one.
That wasn't you there, was it, Josh?
That wasn't me.
It didn't look like you.
And all of these aren't that easy, so, get the easy ones when you can. All right, here's another one. It's going to happen here. All right, I'm going to play it again just so you see it now that you know where it is. Okay. Official call is no call. Play on.
I didn't really see anything to draw a foul on that, but
All right, so you've got a no call. You agree with the official.
I agree with the no call too.
Okay, what does he do? He's got 2 feet on the floor. He's facing his opponent. So do we agree? I'm going to stop
yes,
it.
legal
Do we
guarding.
agree he's got a legal guarding position?
Yep.
I can't tell if there's a push off here or not.
Okay,
So-
but we at least agree he has established a legal guarding position.
Right.
Absolutely.
All right, now if he falls down for sure, who caused him to fall down? The offensive player. The offensive player came into the defensive player and caused him to fall down. Now, I'm not going to say he didn't stick his arms out. Maybe he did. All right. Maybe he stuck his arms out, which then should have been called as a hand check. Maybe he gave it a little extra Hollywood. Why is this not? Here we go. Come on. Maybe he gave a little extra Hollywood to make it look good, but the point is the offensive player went into the defender and knocked him over.
Yeah, and now when you slow it down, that looks like he did that, right?
I got a charging foul on that because it doesn't have to be a big contact to knock a person over to call a foul. He just needs to be moved into illegally.
But it looks like he puts both hands on the.
And Mike, I am okay. If you're going to come up with a hand check on that, that's fine. Because he put 2 hands on the ball. And you could say, well, he had 2 hands up and the player came into him. But 2 hands on a player is automatic. You don't play defense with 2 hands. So I'm okay with a hand check. But then you should have a hand check there and not a no call.
Okay. I thought it was just block or charge was the A or B call.
And maybe, well, it is for the purposes of this presentation. All right. Maybe I'll take that one out next time. All right, play number 3. I believe this one happens right around here. All right, on the floor is a charging foul. Did he get it right? I'm going to play it again real quick before we move on. Did he get it right? Looks like he plowed him over pretty good. We have any guesses before I continue?
It looks like the defender is moving into the postman making the move. It looks like he's coming forward into him.
All right, let's watch.
There's no
Let's watch,
verticality that
Mike.
I can see. Pardon me?
Do we have a legal guarding position?
Yes. Yes.
He's established a legal guarding position, but then what does he do? As Mike said, he moves toward the offensive opponent. So the contact was caused by
The defender.
the defender.
Why?
Or at least, maybe they both caused a contact, but he lost his legality because he moved toward his opponent. So that is a blocking foul. Just because a player gets square in the torso and gets knocked over pretty well does not always mean it's going to be a charge. So we have to know, referee the defense, right? That
So
was
the basket was good. I saw it go through. So you count the basket and give him one?
So if it's a block, basket's good and he gets one shot.
Okay.
But he called a charge, so what do we do?
No basket.
Wipe the basket off, right? Because the ball becomes dead as soon as the charge happens. All right, play number 4. Mike, you were on top of that one. Good job. Let's see. I don't remember where this one happens. Let's watch. Right in the middle there. Okay, on the floor is a blocking foul. He called a block. Play it again real quick. It happened right here.
Yeah.
What do we got? Anyone yet?
I got charge or no call because
No, you go
like,
you
yeah,
go
like-
either way on that. The other guy was kind of going up for the shot
All right.
already.
Charge or no call. But you're the official on the floor. You can't say charge or no call. You got to come up with something. What do you got?
Block.
me, I'd go no call on that.
No call. All right, you're leaning to the no call. Let's see what we got. We're gonna zoom it in. Do we agree he has a legal guarding position? He's got 2 feet on the floor here facing his opponent. He's airborne now, but he just came down to the floor, which means he got there before the defender did.
Okay, I blew it.
And then he ran into him, right?
Yeah, I blew it too.
That's a charge. And you know, I'm not a big believer in 2 bodies on the floor, we got to come up with something. I'm not a believer in that because there are times when 2 bodies are on the floor and you've got absolutely nothing. So you don't come up with a foul just because there's bodies on the floor. But this one, he hit him. There was clearly some contact which caused them both to go to the floor. And that's what people mean when they say 2 bodies on the floor, you got to have a foul, because usually when there's 2 bodies on the floor, there's contact that was illegal and caused them both to fall down. So something happened. This
Right.
one was significant enough where they both fell down and there was definitely contact. I've got a charge.
I blew it.
All right. Play number 5. Also happens in the paint here, even though there's technically no paint. Did we see it? It was a passing crash right here. I'm going to play it again. Charge call was made on the floor. Any guesses?
I see the charge. I don't know.
All right, let's play it slow and check it out.
I mean, I see it, but
He comes in. He passes the ball away. Was the defender in a legal guarding position?
yes.
Yes, he was. Okay, the 2 stipulations were met. Is he within his own vertical plane? I think he is. Now, don't nitpick with the, oh, I thought he kind of came into him a little bit. If it's a little bit and you think he is really trying to go straight up, you got to give the player the benefit of the doubt, because I tell guys all the time, try to stand by yourself and jump straight up in the air and come straight back down in the exact same spot. It's not that easy. So we do have to read some judgment as to whether the player was moving toward them or not. And if it's slight, I'm going to say that he wasn't. His own vertical plane is for the most part, up and down.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's slow motion looks more like a charge. Full speed, it almost looks like he was acting a bit like he was.
He might have put some Hollywood into it.
But yeah, charge I think is the right call.
And Mike, it's much easier to give a presentation when I can slow things down.
True.
You're absolutely right. In real time, and this is why we do this. So when we do see it in real time, later down the line, we do get it right because we've seen enough in slow motion to know what to look for. This should be a charge. Official got it right. Yeah, okay. Play number 6. Another pass and crash right there at the bottom of the screen. You see it?
I got a charge.
I got a charge.
I'm going to play it again. What was the? It was officially there was no call on the floor.
Sure looked like that guy got in position there.
Did he get there before he went airborne? That's the question, right? Did he have a legal guarding position? Well, let's find out. He comes in. It's close. It's close. Why is it not? Okay, sorry, I didn't move on to the next slide. I got 2 people saying it's a charge. Is he airborne yet?
No.
No, he is not. So he has a legal guarding position, correct?
Yes.
Is he within his own vertical plane?
Yes.
Yes.
Who caused the contact?
Shooter.
The blue.
The
Shooter.
offensive
Pass.
player, totally.
Yes.
That is a charging foul. We cannot pass on that. The kid did a nice job setting up in his path, and he just ran into him.
Yep.
Now, can I make an observation as to what happened here? Did
Sure.
you see what happened to the ball after the crash? Did you see?
Oh yeah,
He
White
passed
was
it,
covered.
and the defensive team received the ball, which might be why this foul was passed on. Because if you call that foul, are you taking away a greater advantage away from the defensive team that just got possession? It's a little bit higher of a philosophy, but maybe that's why it was passed on. They thought they got the ball, and if we call that foul, now we stop their possible fast break.
okay.
But the play on itself, on its own merits, charge. Totally. All right. Play number 7. Back to this game. All right. Play on the call on the floor is a charge call. Did you see the play? Where was the contact?
I think that guy moved
didn't see
into him.
that. I thought the guy acted.
All right.
I thought he slid to the left. I don't think he.
Where
ran.
did the contact happen?
I don't know. I didn't see it.
On the shoulder, right?
Did he make contact?
I think he did. It's kind of hard to tell. Let's zoom in a little bit and see. First of all, does he have a legal guarding position?
Yes.
He does.
Finish, Dad.
And he hits him in the shoulder there. Now, Mike, I agree with you. A lot of these, they like to put some Hollywood in it and act a little and make it look like it's all really. But the fact is that he hit him in the shoulder. The contact was in the shoulder. And we, for some reason, we as officials don't like making calls when they hit him just here, right? We like it when they hit him right here and they knock him over and everyone knows.
Yes.
But this is part of the torso. My shoulder is part of my torso. And so if I get hit here, by rule, it's still a charge
Okay.
on the offensive player.
All right.
As that's what the official called, and that was the right call.
Okay. That's what I'm learning, watching so I can learn. But
Those are the ones we need to have a little more courage on, because I do the same thing. That happens sometimes. You kind of go, oh, well, he didn't hit him that hard. And so, all right.
got it.
2 more plays. Now, the last group I showed this to, they didn't like this one.
I thought he had defensive position on him.
What does
against
he do, which makes this look kind of bad? He kind of starts to fall down, right? There was no call on the floor. They passed on it. If you look at the defender, he had a legal guarding position, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right? 2 feet on the floor here, and he's facing his opponent. His player's not airborne. But then what does he do? He kind of starts to fall down, right? Are you allowed to fall down to absorb the contact, to duck?
Yes.
You are. Now, we need to determine, was he absorbing contact? Was he trying to fall down to make it look?
I thought
Again,
that was more of a charge than the last one.
The way I rule it is, if he didn't start to fall down and the offensive player ran into him, would it still have been a charge? Would it have been a charge then? Yes, right? So why wouldn't be if he hit him a little bit when he was falling down? So that's a charge, which you were right on top of, Mike.
Well, what did they call it on the floor? Nothing?
Nothing. They passed on it. The ball went in and they said, go down to the other end. And I could be okay with that because the contact wasn't severe, but I also say if it happens there and you don't call it, then the next time it's going to get a little bit worse, and the next time it's going to get a little bit worse, and then you're going to have something major where if you call it right away, the players might be a little more prone to avoid that kind of a charge.
Okay.
You're setting the tone. All right, last play of the game, of the presentation. This is my favorite clip. Okay, the call on the floor is a block. It happened right here. I'm going to play it again.
Glenbrook North.
Glenbrook North versus Schaumburg, it looks like.
Looked like he had defensive position.
All right.
Legal
Let's
position.
look at it a little bit closer.
And I'm not seeing him leaning a leg into him.
Okay, so there's clearly a lot of contact too, right? Do we see him like kind of shudder a little from the contact? So there was enough to have a foul. Was it a block or was it a charge? Does he have a legal guarding position?
Yes, and he's not airborne.
Totally has a legal guarding position, yes. Where does he hit him?
Inner thigh and shoulder. But there's a lot more contact than that first time in number 7.
That is true. Let's watch it. Let's watch it again. I'm going to mark out this contact because I am not convinced either way on a block or a charge. Because look at his legs. Where are his legs? If the contact is here in the shoulder, it's legal. But if the contact is in the leg is outside of his torso, which then makes it illegal. So since this leg is outside of the frame of his body, that is not a legal guarding position. He's extending that into the path of the shooter. Now, what makes this difficult is, again, if the contact is made here, that's a legal part of the frame. So that's going to be a charge. If the contact is made here, that's going to be a block because that is not a legal part of the block of the guard. Do we understand that?
Yeah, he's really widespread, so he could actually stick out his knee like that, and that would constitute a block.
And we need to know how they are standing and we need to know where the contact is because that determines whether it's legal or not. So this one, and at this angle, we can't really tell where the contact was. This official probably has the best view as to where the contact was. So I'm going to say he hit the leg first, which was illegal, which is why he called a block.
I agree. If he hit the leg first, it's a block.
It looks like he hit him up top too, but if he hits that leg first, I'm going to say, you know what? Your leg's way out of the way. He might have been able to get around you if he didn't hit that leg. I'm going block.
Okay.
And that's what the official called, right?
And that's what he called.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's right there. How could he miss it, right?
Yeah, and someone,
Yeah, right.
someone brought up the other night when I showed a clip, it wasn't this one. Well, that's not a very good angle. Well, you know what? We are learning by video by watching one angle. So all we can do is make a determination on what we see, and never do I ever try to question the official on the floor because they totally see something different. They're right there. They've got a different angle. They could have seen something that made them call what they call. All we can do is comment on what we see by the angle that we have, which often is the same angle that the coach sees, which might be why the coach yells at us so much.
Josh,
Yes.
as a new high school official, and I have a coach in my ear about that, if I call the block because I see the contact in the leg first, is that how I explain it to him? I just say, hey, I saw he contacted him in the leg first. What would be the way that I might communicate clearly to a coach?
Let's say this coach here is the coach that's yelling at you. Is he yelling at you as the calling official or you as the partner?
I would say I'm a two-man crew. So for me as a new official, it'd be the guy making the call.
So I'm going to give you two answers. Let's say it's a two-man crew and he's on this side over here and he made the call. And he's yelling at you because you're right there, right? He's going to yell at you because you're the closest. I'm going to say, Coach, he was right there. How can that be? Coach, he was right there. He had the best look at it. All right. If he
Turn and walk.
If he yells at me after I called it and I come running up here, first of all, I'm probably going to say very little because no matter what I say to him, he's not going to agree. He just wants to tell me he doesn't like it, and I could be very logical and explain it, and he's probably not going to accept it at that particular moment.
Okay.
All right. You could say it was illegal, coach. It was a block. Just reinforce what you have. If later, not long time later, but shortly after, there's a calm spot where the play is stopped and he says, hey, Mike, what did you have on that? It looked like it was a charge to me the whole time. If he's talking to you calmly, you could say, Coach, I thought his leg was extended outside of his body, which caused it to be a block. Yes, he hit him up top, but he hit that leg first, which was illegal. And that's really all you have to say. And if he doesn't like it, doesn't like it. But most coaches will go, huh, okay. Because they don't see that, right? All they see is their player getting hit and falling down.
Okay, cool. No, thank you for the explanation.
All right. You guys have any other questions? That's all I have as far as guarding is.
Oh, it was great. I loved the way you just got us in certain situations, and I want to be a better official to be more accurate with what I see now. You have to learn how to look at things in a different perspective, and that's what you've been bringing to me.
Yeah.
Well,
I appreciate that.
I appreciate that, Tim, and that's what we're doing. It's I always say it, but we're retraining our brain about the way we look at things.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard to do it when it happens fast in front of you and you got to make that decision right then and there. But that doesn't mean we can't go back, look at it, break it down and say, oh, wait, no, he did this. So the next time the play might seem slower to me because, yeah, I've seen this play 15 times now.
Yeah.
And then you're on top of it and you got it. So, all right, well, that's it for today. You guys have any other questions before I cut this off?
All right, Josh.
Great, man. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, good to see you guys.
All right, you too,
Hey,
Josh.
good luck in your season.
Thank you. You too.